Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Turn Bark Time. I'm the Turn,
I'm the Bark.
and we're gonna be here a long time. Still here a long time. Bark, how was your turkey?
It was good. It was good. Gilbert was delicious.
Oh, we named him, huh?
Yeah, we named him the day that we got him at Fred Meyer, and then he promptly fell out of the plastic apparatus for carrying him, and it felt like something out of a National Lampoon's movie when he was like scooting across the floor.
I love it.
I was like, Gilbert, come back.
Oh man, we did good. My sister did a great job. She hosted. We got up and over the mountains. Okay, so that was awesome. So, for all of those, we hope you enjoyed your turkey day. Bark, we are on season 4, episode 3. Right? Episode 3. So I dropped a reel for you guys, just giving you a little heads up that we are going to talk about, did a farm animal really cause or almost cause an all-out war between two countries? That would be Great Britain and the United States. So Barker, let's set the background here.
Well, I don't know how far you want to go back, but essentially there's been this, the United States and then our weird stepbrother that lives in mom and dad's basement with a lot of cats, Canada. Um, and there's always kind of been like this idea, like that the United States, like maybe Canada becomes part of America. And so as America starts moving west, we have these border disputes, and then eventually we go, well, we're going to draw a line. What'd you draw a line?
We're really
Screw it,
good
draw.
on this.
We're just going to draw a straight line.
Sometimes they're straight, sometimes they're crooked.
And so part of that was what is it? The 49th parallel,
Yeah, 49th parallel.
which is why there's that weird little piece of Washington
Point Roberts.
Point Roberts. There we go. That during coronavirus was in a really bad way because you had to drive through Canada to get to Blaine School District, but you couldn't drive through Canada.
Every kid learned how to sail at that point. Just started.
But the Canadians, Vancouver Island is lower than the 49th parallel.
Mhm.
And so there was a dispute in, I guess, what would you call it? The Upper Sound?
Yeah, it'd be the Upper Puget Sound.
As to what the boundary is between, at that time, the Vancouver Island colony, and the Oregon territory.
Yep.
And part of the problem was there's a couple of maps. I think one, George Vancouver made one in 1798, and a guy named Charles Wilkes made one in 1845. But again, they're maps of the era. Like, they can't zoom out. They don't have airplanes. Like, it's a rough approximation of what's there geographically. And so it really boils down to where's the border going to be, and it really comes down to who's going to control San Juan Island, Orcas Island, and I think the other one, what's the third one? Lopez?
Yep, Lopez Island.
Like, is it going to be split down the center? Is it going to go, are we going to use the Haro Strait, which is the one would be the furthest to the west, which would give all 3 of those islands to the United States? Or are we going to use Rosario Strait, which would do the opposite and give all 3 of those islands to British Columbia, or sorry, to the Vancouver Island colony at the time?
And the worst part was in their treaty that's signed in Washington, D.C., and I want to say it's I'm going to double check my thing to make sure I don't screw this up, the Treaty of Oregon. So when it is signed in the Treaty of Oregon, the quote from the treaty is, it is from the settling border of the 49th parallel from the Rocky Mountains to the middle of the channel which separates the continent from Vancouver's island, and then south through the channel to the Strait of Juan de Fuca and west to the Pacific Ocean. The problem with that is nobody clarified what strait they were talking about, or the channel they were talking about, I should say. So it did not.
There's the 2 straits on the outside, and then there's the San Juan Channel that runs right down the center, with San Juan Island on one side and Orcas and Lopez Island on the other.
Yep. So basically what builds from there is the Hudson's Bay Company. So one of the things we noticed, sorry, backing up a little bit, is if you're going to legitimize your claim to an area, you have to put your citizens or companies or people there, because then you can point and say, my people are living there. You claim this island, but do you have anyone actually living there? And the answer is usually no. So it legitimizes your claim. So the first thing that is the Hudson's Bay Company actually sends people out there. And even though it's for political reasons, they establish a very profitable sheep farm.
Right. They bring like 1,300 sheep, which over 6 years becomes 4,500 sheep.
Yep. It's the Bellevue Straight Farm.
Yes,
Literally spelled like Bellevue, Washington, but cut Bell and View.
And then roughly during the same time period, a few dozen American settlers are also brought to the island, San Juan Island, and plopped on San Juan Island.
Yes.
Which I believe they're using the Donation Land Act. Is that the right one? Where you move out west, and if you you improve the land or whatnot.
Oh, not donation. Homestead Act.
Yeah, it might be. I might have the wrong act in my head, but anyway, like they're moving out there with the idea that, like, again, it's the same basic idea. We're going to move out there. We're going to farm. We're going to do something with it. We're going to improve the land, so we can claim that it's ours. And that pretty much gets us. That's up through 1857.
Yep.
And then, I guess the near catastrophe happens June 15th, 1859.
Yep. So before that, though, in the spring, that's when the 18 Americans have kind of settled into claims that are on that sheep grazing land. And so the Americans think that the American government, the U.S. government back in Washington, D.C., will legitimize their claim. They're here. They are meant to be here. Whereas the HBC or the Hudson's Bay Company and the British government looks at them and like, they're basically squatters, right? They're trespassing on land. They shouldn't be there. And tensions start to build. And I mean, we're talking, again, or we're not talking about a ton of people. We're talking about like 18 American settlers and whoever's helping run the sheep farm for Great Britain. And so it's really not a lot of people. But on June 15th,
the number of people who will watch this on the day that it's dropped.
Yes, exactly.
Tens of people.
Tens of followers.
Tens of people.
One of them is my mom, who actually, when I said that in one of our previous episodes, she was like, yes, she does. She commented on our video.
And we appreciate all 10s of you.
Yes, thank you so much. So there's a guy by the name of Lyman. Are you going Lyman or Lyman, you think?
I like Lyman better.
Okay. Lyman Cutler actually shoots and kills a Hudson's Bay Company pig that's rooting around in his garden. So what ends up happening is, obviously, the Hudson's Bay Company and British authorities are not happy about the loss of their animal. So they threaten to arrest Cutler and remove all 18 trespassers, as they call them, from the island. With that being said,
he offered to pay them $10.
Oh, I missed.
And then they wanted $100
for a pig. Come
Yep.
on.
And then
this is like the guy in Mexico with the bread.
Yes, it is. It is. Charles Griffin, the guy who owned the pig, who's actually an Irishman. So it could be Irish bacon. I don't know. But anyway, my favorite is there's a quote where he essentially says, the guy's like, your pig was eating my potatoes. Your pig was in my potatoes. And he's like, it's your job to keep your potatoes out of my pig. Which is like the most backwards comment. Like, it's your job to keep my pig out of your stuff. Which makes like no sense.
Zero sense.
And so at that point, things start to get a little heated. And when a foreign government says we're going to arrest you, you go to your government going, I don't want to get arrested.
I would like help.
By Britain. And this is where we start name dropping.
Oh, yeah. There's so many people involved in this that I didn't realize that will go on to be either infamous or famous in their in U.S. history.
So the head of the Department of Oregon, because apparently it's not a territory, it's a territory, right? So there's a Department of Oregon. Sends George Pickett, as in like Pickett's charge Pickett, but he's not Pickett's charge Pickett yet because it's
No.
1859.
He's just a captain at this point.
Captain George Pickett with 66 troops and some guns on the USS Massachusetts, which is a boat, not the state, but it's named after a state, but it's kind of confusing.
Yeah.
And so he goes up there and he lands and like puts his cannons out in front of the 3 British warships that would promptly destroy him if he actually tried to do anything. So he goes fine and moves like 3 miles inland on top of a bigger hill.
Mm-hmm.
Says, I don't like you. And so it kind of leads to this escalation. And then who else comes up there?
So hold on really quick. So I'm going to jump in and looking at this. But when Pickett shows up, there's no British warships yet, is what I have.
Okay.
And then the governor of Vancouver Island, by the name of James Douglas, is like kind of concerned about it at first, and then he gets mad. He's like, "Why are you doing this?" And so he orders a British captain, Geoffrey Phillips Hornby of the Royal Navy, and he has a 31-gun steam frigate, the HMS Tribune, to get rid of Pickett and avoid an armed clash if possible, right? Like just show off, flex your muscles, and leave. He gets 2 more warships. And so when Pickett refuses to withdraw, he writes for more help. So he gets basically through, this is like a standoff through the summer, like July and April or in August, people are just like showing up on this island. So he gets more Marines who have experience landing under fire for missions that they've completed in China. And he doesn't take any actions against the Americans. He's just been just waiting until a rear admiral shows up named Lambert Baines. Man, we have great names back in the day. And he's been the commander of British naval forces in the Pacific, and he's appalled at the situation and says, "Why in the heck are 2 great nations going to get in a fight over a pig?" And that's at that point where we start to calm down a little bit.
Another person who shows up is Henry Martin Roberts, who eventually will be the general of the Army of the Potomac, which is like the Army of America in the Civil War. He's also the guy who writes the Roberts Rules of Order.
Yeah.
So if you understand parliamentary procedure at all, like this was the dude who did it. Now, granted, it didn't solve the problem. Maybe it inspired him being on Vancouver Island or being on, San Juan Island. But I mean, we get to this point where there's 460 American soldiers with 14 cannons and about 2,100 British soldiers and 70 cannons split across 5 warships.
Yeah.
Over a pig.
Yeah. And for those of you who have not been to San Juan Island, it's not very big. Like I remember as a kid, we went on an 8th grade trip with the outdoor club, and we rode our bikes. And I rode my bike from the English camp to the American camp. It's not very far apart because the island's not that big. And we got, you're talking 2,100 troops and 460 Americans. It's like, this is not that many people to fight over this little island.
And so
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So President James Buchanan, turns on the Winfield Scott signal. Winfield Scott, we need you. And mind you, it takes Winfield Scott 6 weeks to get there.
Yeah,
because he goes from New York to Vancouver Island, or like to San Juan Island, by sailing down to Panama,
walking across,
crossing. Like there's no canal yet.
Yeah,
so he's got to like get off the boat, walk across, get on another boat, and then sail north up the coast. And he gets up there, and he's essentially like, "Hey, this is dumb."
Yeah.
And then, well, there's a things really just kind of like stop at that point.
Yeah.
But there's still a British camp and an American camp, but the Americans are kind of busy fighting each other in this little thing called the American Civil War.
Yep.
Which is, again, Winfield Scott's going to be involved, Henry Roberts, George Pickett.
Yep, all these guys.
Now, during that time period, the British did say, like, there was some people who just said, Why don't we just go take it? America's busy fighting. Like, America,
Yeah.
who's going to stop us? But they don't. And throughout that time, in 1866, Vancouver Island merges with British Columbia to become part of British Columbia. And then eventually, I think it was in 1871, so after the Civil War is over, British
72.
Columbia joins the Dominion of Canada.
Oh, sorry, never mind. You're right. Keep going.
And later in that year, we actually get a Treaty of Washington, which doesn't solve the problem yet.
No.
Because like there was a commission where they were arguing about like there was the two different options. Like, do we give all the islands to the Americans? Do we give all the islands to the British? And in the Treaty of Washington, they essentially agree to go to arbitration.
Yep.
And they will let the Emperor of Germany.
Yep. Kaiser
decide. Wilhelm the First.
Yep.
And he doesn't even solve it himself.
Nope.
He outsources it to three dudes in Geneva.
Yep. And they spend
they look at
it. Looking at it. It's what? Yeah. Is it a year? Let's see.
Yeah, it takes them a year.
Yeah.
And like, it's literally like three options. Like, do you give all the islands to the Americans? Do you give all the islands to the British, or do you give one to the British and two to the Americans? Like,
how do you break it
what's
down?
the right answer?
Yep.
And they decide that eventually, like, the American answer is better. I don't know why. It doesn't really say. But at that point, like in 1872,
yep.
So what? This is over. I got to do math. 13 years later, the British finally withdraw their marine. Like, the British withdraw their garrison of people
now
off San Juan Island.
What did happen, though, and this is why they still have their people on there 13 years later, is that one thing Winfield Scott got set up with the British commanders was that the island would be under joint military occupation. And it was just an agreement. And then when the Treaty of Washington came out, it was like, okay, we have this agreement. We're going to solve this problem now. And so now, 12 years later, we get our final solution to the big war.
Well, and like, I guess the strategic value of San Juan Island is that you have Vancouver Island, which there's Fort Vancouver, there was a fort there on the bottom or the southern shore of Vancouver Island, which essentially controls the Strait of Juan de Fuca, getting into the Sound. And by controlling San Juan, like, you control getting up into, what is it? It's the Georgia Strait.
Yeah, up through the one that's in between the continental British Columbia and Vancouver Island.
Yeah, so like you can control like essentially who can get to Vancouver, BC.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean that's why Britain cares, because they're afraid the Americans are going to come and gum everything up for them.
Right, but like
they want to protect their access.
But with the establishment of like 1872, we're talking about Seattle's being built, Tacoma's being built. So now San Juan Island provides that. You come through the strait and you come down towards the bigger cities. That's there to defend it as well.
Yeah, and I mean you see this happens later on those islands. There are, it's like they're not World War. They're like actually like pre-World War I era forts.
Yep.
But it's just like Fort Columbia on the mouth of the Columbia and Fort Stevens. They're there to protect American port access from foreign invaders. And like those islands did have fortifications built on them at a later date and time for the valid concerns of why they wanted to fortify them.
Yeah.
In the 1800s.
Yeah. So now here's the most important thing. How many people lost their lives in this war, Barker?
My answer, well, I'm going to say 0.
It is 0. The only casualty of the whole war was the pig. So that concludes our discussion on the territorial war that a farm almost war. So, and again, the biggest lesson here is that the two governments, both the UK and the United States, did not know really what was going on and hadn't realized that this had escalated until a little later. And they were like, what the heck is going on here? So.
But the fact that you had to bring because Winfield Scott has is famous for his service in the Mexican-American War. So
Yep.
like you have to get like a war hero from the East Coast to go to like literally some backwoods potato
Literally the middle of nowhere.
to go like be like, hey, doofuses, it was a pig.
Yeah, let's let this go. So
I kind of feel like it's everything that happens at the World Cup right now. Like, oh, Messi, like his foot touched a Mexican, shirt.
yeah.
Oh, we need a formal international apology. An American soccer player said Iran instead of Iran, but they let George Bush do it for 2 presidencies. Nobody said anything, but now it's an incident. So you know what I mean? Like maybe we need to like reanimate Winfield Scott.
Yeah, just bring it back. Everybody just calm down. Oh my God.
Anyway,
I love it. I love it. So, all right, ladies and gents. Until next time, on the turn. Oh, sorry, Barker, I jumped ahead. Barker, anything left?
Thanksgiving is over. You can now legally listen to your Christmas music.
Yep.
Mariah Carey can come into the out now.
Yeah, into the box, out of the box.
Yep.
So, yeah, hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're staying safe. I know roads get a little dicey this time of year. Weather turns a little sharp. We had 5 inches of snow in Quincy today or yesterday and today. So we were closed today. I'm hoping for a little 2-hour late start since it's 11:15 right now. But we'll see what happens. So, all right. Well, until next time, I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're going to be here a long time. Have a good night, everybody.
Be safe.
And be well.